Okay, so studying the book of Genesis, talking about Lot. So hold on, I'm going to pull up Genesis chapter 17, I believe it is. Genesis chapter 19, focusing on verse 17, actually, Genesis 19 and 17. So the first thing I was asking was, how many daughters did Lot actually have? Because in the Bible, it speaks of Lot's 2 daughters. But then when I looked up in the Bible on Google and asked how many children did Lot have, it says 4 daughters. And it mentions there are 2 daughters mentioned in the book of Genesis, but in the book of Jasper, which says is part of the apocryphal books, in the Bible written in 1611, it says that book of Jasper is there, and it speaks of 2 other daughters. So I was kind of confused as far as how many children are there. So here it says, Lot, they're getting ready to destroy in verse 14 of chapter 19. So Lot went out and spoke to his son-in-law, who were pledged to marry his daughters. He said, hurry and get out of this place because the Lord is about to destroy the city. But his son-in-law thought he was joking. So when it says pledged to daughter, I'm thinking that was meaning he was pledged to marry those 2 that were there. But then in verse 15, it says, with the coming of dawn, the angels urged Lot, saying, hurry, take your wife and your 2 daughters who are here, or you will be swept away within the city when the city is punished. Why would he say your 2 daughters who are here if he had only 2 daughters? Right. So if he's saying take your 2 daughters who are here, then the angel must have known that there were 2 more daughters. Right? Or more. Or there was there was more than those 2 that were there. Or he would have simply said in verse 15, take your wife and your 2 daughters, or you will be swept away. But he said, take your wife and your 2 daughters who are here. So that's an indication that there are more children. So where people are thinking that the son-in-laws mentioned in the previous verses, they're oftentimes been saying that they were pledged to marry the 2 daughters that were in the house. I think that's erroneous because of this verse 15, which says your 2 daughters that are here, which indicates that there's possibly more daughters. So those other 2 daughters were not in the house with Lot, which indicates possibly that the son-in-laws they were married to, they were in their own house. And the son-in-law simply came over. And the daughter-in-laws were not there. Right? But anyway, it says, we could fathom or imagine that's possibly what it was. That's another take on this whole story of Lot. Then it says in verse 16, and my whole point of making this this voiceover right now and this video or audio is because with 2020, I believe people who were afraid to do things and were afraid to advance with God, and they themselves held themselves back. And I believe that God is now making it where for 2020, we who were afraid and held our own selves back are now going to learn from Lot's story not to hold ourselves back. Because when I go on, I'm going to read to you, and so you understand, Lot, even though he was a powerful man of God and a good man of God, he himself doubted himself. Lot doubted himself. And it's going to show you here. And it says in verse 16. Now, remember, verse 15, the angel said, here, take your wife, your 2 daughters here, or you'll be swept away. They told Lot this. Now, Lot trusted in God. He trusted in God. But then there comes a point in all of our lives when we like, I know you saying this, but, I know you saying this, but I'm really not. I know what you're saying. I've been here and I've been in this place, and it ain't been the best, but it ain't been the worst. And I'm not sure if I really want to go, because now I'm going to let go of something that I'm familiar with, something that it ain't been the best, but it's at least a little comfortable. And now you're getting ready to take me somewhere where I have, it's unknown to me. And I don't know what's going to happen. And I'm not sure if I want to go there because it's an unknown. And you're taking me from something I'm familiar with, even though Lot wasn't even happy where he was. He was afraid kind of to go where God was going to send him. You get what I'm saying? He was afraid to go because his fear was, I know where my living situation right now ain't the best, but God, I'm not too sure where you about to send me. You know? So we all get in those moments where we get like Lot. Mm-hmm. I don't know, God, where you want to send me. I don't know if I'm ready to let go of this right now. It ain't been the best, but it's been working for me. I know I'm a better person. I know I'm a good person. I know I could do better, but I'm not sure about what's on the other side because I can't see what's on the other side. I know what's here. I know the crazies that I got to deal with here. I don't know what new crazy I got to deal with over there. So just like Lot, a lot of us are afraid to let go of the familiar. But here's what's going to happen in 2020. Here's what's going to happen. It says in verse 16 of chapter 19, in Genesis chapter 19, verse 16, it says, when he hesitated, get this, when Lot hesitated. Now the angels told him, go get your wife, get your 2 daughters that's here. Don't worry about the ones that ain't here. Basically. Oh, and that's in the spiritual realm. Now, even families, even us, we can't worry about the ones that ain't here. Go ahead and take the ones that's here and do what God says to do. Everybody can't go into this next stratosphere. And it's sad. And that's probably one of the reasons too, why Lot hesitated. Because he probably knew, I got 2 more daughters. Mm-hmm. I got 2 more children. I got son-in-laws. I don't want to leave them. Mm-hmm. And to know that that the city was going to be destroyed and they're in the city. He didn't want to go there. He didn't want to leave. He hesitated. And that's enough to make a parent hesitate. Mm-hmm. But get this, in verse 16 of Genesis chapter 19, verse 16, it says, when he hesitated, when Lot hesitated, here's what God's going to do in 2020. When he hesitated, the men, which were the angels, grasped his hand. They grabbed Lot's hand and the hand of his wife and the hand of his 2 daughters and led them safely out of the city, for the Lord was merciful to them. God's going to start pulling us by the hand and pulling us and say, listen, I know you hesitating, but I'm not about to let you perish with them. I know you love them. I know you care, but I am not about to let you perish. I need to move you. I need to move you and those that's in your household. I need to move. I need to move you. And he's physically pulling people to safety. Now, here's the thing. Here's what happened. When God started pulling us. Here, you right, Holy Spirit. When God started pulling you, God will start doing stuff like your house will go into foreclosure. Your house will be repossessed. Mm-hmm. Now you forced to move. Yeah. You forced to move. You can't hold on to it no more. Yeah. Your stuff is gone. He did that to us when he forcefully moved us from Davie to Georgia. Mm-hmm. They's coming after the house. God said, I'm moving you. I'm pulling you over here because I'm about to do something different over here. And I need to get you to safety. Mm-hmm. Amen. It's like I'm in church preaching again. So it says, he says, when he hesitated, the men, the angels, grabbed Lot's hand and the hands of his wife and his 2 daughters and led them safely out of the city, for the Lord was merciful to them. Then in verse 17, as soon as they had brought them out, one of the angels said to Lot, flee for your lives. Don't look back and don't stop anywhere in the plain. The plain is the lower level. Right. Don't stop anywhere in the plain. Flee to the mountains, or you will be swept away. The angels was telling Lot, run as fast as you can because stuff is going to start happening fast. Mm-hmm. And I believe that's what God is saying for 2020. We're going to have to start running quick with businesses, with ventures, with everything. We ain't going to have time to look back because businesses are going to start running and start manifesting real quick. We ain't going to have time to look back. And even if we take time to look back, then the things that we're looking forward to might be destroyed because we're looking back. Right. So in 2020, we are going to have to get focused and get moving and go straight forward. We can't be looking back. So it says here, he said, flee for your lives. Don't look back and don't stop anywhere in the plain. The plain is the low fields. Mm-hmm. He said, go to the mountaintop. Now, here's the thing that I want to point out to the people. When the angel said, go to the mountaintop, he's saying, go higher. Right. Don't stay down here low, go higher. It's time for you to go, get out the plain. You can't stay down here in the low field. It's time for you to get high. Mm-hmm. It's time for you to get high up. Go to the mountains. He said, go to the mountains or you're going to be swept away. It ain't no time for us to be sitting down here low. That's why we can't be sitting here looking back. We can't be sitting down here in the plain. It's time for us to go to the mountain and get high. But here's what a lot of people did, and a lot of people might do. And a lot of people, here's what they did. They did like Lot. Lot got nervous again. In verse 18, here go Lot. But Lot said to them, no, my lords, please, your servant has found favor in your eyes, and you have shown great kindness to me and spared my life. But I can't flee to the mountains. He was too afraid to even go to the mountains. He wanted to still look back literally and stay in the plains. Mm-hmm. So he said, but I can't flee to the mountains. This disaster will overtake me and I will die. He was so afraid of getting elevated so high up. He thought that if he got high up, that it was going to be too much for him and he was going to die. Now, here's the thing with people with 2020, there's going to be businesses and ventures and things that's going to come to people, including us, that we going to think is too much and too great for us. But don't get fearful. Charge right at it. Because just like Lot, some people are going to start saying, I can't. That vision is too big for me, God. Just leave me right here on the plain level and let me work this. But what God is saying, no, I want you to go to the mountaintop. I want you to go higher up. I want you to have that executive business. I want you to have that executive, that business, that building. I want you to have this executive status. You are no longer the little people. You are the one that I've elevated to the mountaintop. But there are going to be some that are going to be like Lot and say, no, just leave me right here in the plain. I'll be all right. That's what they're going to say. Leave me down in the plain. And then he says over here, in verse 20, he said, look, here is a town near enough to run to. Now he's settling. He's settling. He's telling the angels now. The angels were sent there by God to tell you to do something better. And instead of you doing something better, you settling for less. And now you're trying to direct the angels to tell them what you want to settle for. When the angels are sent there by God to tell you what to do, the angels ain't going to do nothing that God didn't tell them to do. And anything God tells you to do, God's going to prepare a way for you to do it. So why is he sitting there? Not Lot. Listen, no, God, that's too big for me. That's too big of a job for me. That's too big of a venture for me. That's too big minded for me. Just take me to this one little town. You still thinking little minded. You still thinking little. Then he says, but I can't flee to the mountains. This disaster will overtake me and I will die. In verse 20, he says, look, here's a town near enough to run to. So it's near enough to run to. It's near enough to just get to real quick. It ain't time to be trying to get the stuff real quick. It's time to get in the work and get the big stuff. He like this close enough for me. I don't need to go that high. This close enough. No, this is not what 2020 is about. That's why it's a double digit. That's why a double number, 2020. This is a time to be going to get the greatness, the greater for that you've been looking for. Not the settling moment. This is not a settling moment. That's why he said get out the plane. It's not a settling time. 2020, the year 2020 is not that. He says, it is very small, isn't it? Then my life will be spared. So he said in Genesis 19, verse 20, Lot is telling the angels, look, here's a town small enough to run to, and it's small. Let me flee to it. Let me go there. It is very small, isn't it? He said small twice in one sentence. Then my life will be spared. I don't want the big job, God. I don't want the big blessings. Just let me have the little stuff and I'll be good with that. He said small twice. I mean, that's ridiculous. Then in verse 21, he said to them, very well, I will grant this request too. That's what the angels are saying. The angels are saying, very well, you want small, fine. I'm going to give you small. I'm going to go ahead and give you small because that's what you want. That's what you're settling for. So the angels say, okay, if that's what you want, go ahead. Go ahead and take it. But I know the angels are basically saying, I know what my assignment was. My assignment was to come and deliver you from this and to take you higher, to elevate you. But if you want to be delivered from this and then go to this small place, go ahead. Very well. Go ahead, take that. And that's the same thing that God is saying to the people today that's going into 2020. You want to leave the Sodom that you were in and you want to go ahead and go over to this little small venture. Go ahead. You take that. But I got something better for you. But if you want that, go ahead, because I need to move you from this disaster that's about to take place anyway. Right. So be it on you if you just want to go to the small place. But I told you to get out the plane. I told you to go to the mountain. Then he says, very well, I will grant this request too. I will not overthrow the town you speak of. Now, basically, what the angels are saying was they were going to destroy even that. Right. But because Lot wanted to go there, he said, okay, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to spare that one. Go ahead. But that's not where God wanted him to go. Then in verse 22, he says, but flee there quickly because I cannot do anything until you reach it. That is why the town was called Zoar. Then it says, by the time Lot reached Zoar, the sun had risen over the land. Then the Lord rained down burning sulfur on Sodom and Gomorrah from the Lord of the heavens. Thus he overthrew those cities and the entire plain, destroying all those living in the cities and also the vegetation in the land. But Lot's wife looked back, and she became a pillar of salt. A pillar of salt. Early the next morning, Abraham got up and returned to the place where he had stood before. He looked down toward Sodom and Gomorrah, toward the land of the plain. He saw the dense smoke rising from the land like a smoke of furnace. So when God destroyed the cities of the plain, he remembered Abraham, and he brought Lot out of the catastrophe that overthrew the cities where Lot had lived. Then, and when you study this, it will tell you, it says here, let me see where I can find that part here. When you study this part, it tells you that what Lot did. Okay, so picking back up, Lot decided he wanted to go to Zoar instead, right? So it says here in Genesis chapter 19, verse 29, so when God destroyed the cities of the plain, now God's destroying the cities of the plain, the low parts. He said he remembered Abraham and he brought Lot out of the catastrophe that overthrew the cities where Lot had lived. So he overthrew them. Then in verse 30, he said, Lot and his two daughters left Zoar. Now Zoar is a place that Lot wanted to go to. So now the place that they wanted to go to, now they're leaving. Instead of going to where God told them to go to, which was higher up on the mountains, they went to Zoar because they got afraid to go high up. So they went to Zoar. So now it's saying in verse 30 that what happened was now Lot and his two daughters left Zoar and settled where? Guess where they settled? In the mountains. He was supposed to go there in the first place. He was supposed to go there in the first place. If he would have just went there from the start, he wouldn't have had no problems. But he decided, no, I want to go to Zoar. So it said in verse 30 of Genesis 19, Lot and his two daughters left Zoar. So now that's what's going to happen to people in 2020 if they settle. If they settle for the little stuff, God's going to say, okay, I'm going to give you that. But eventually you're going to have to leave that little stuff and go to where I told you to go. Which was the mountain, which is the higher stuff. But if you want to waste your time in this little stuff, go ahead, because eventually you're going to have to go where I tell you to go. Just like Jonah. Jonah was trying to fight God all the time. God said, I told you to go here and say this. But Jonah fighting, he trying to get on the ship. He trying to do all kinds of stuff. He trying to run. He trying to do all kinds of stuff. Finally, he had to sit in the belly of the whale, which means he had to sit there in turmoil, sit there in problems, sit there in stench. Until he made up his mind, okay, Lord, let me just do it your way. So that's what's going to happen with people in 2020. If they don't get themselves together where it's like, okay, 2020 needs to be a year of freedom where people feel like, you know what? Lord, you told me to go, I'm going to go. I ain't worried about situations. I'm not worried about finances. I'm not worried about this. I'm not worried about that. I'm not worried about any of that. You told me to go, so I'm going to go. I'm going to do this. You told me I'm going to have the big office space. I'm going to go look for that big office space. You told me I'm going to have this type of car. I'm going to look for that type of car. You told me I'm supposed to do this with business. I'm going to do this. I believe 2020 is the year of finances, business transactions. And people nowadays can't be afraid. If God told you to go look at a mall, to buy the entire mall, to go look at the mall, why in the world are you looking at a shopping cart? Or why are you looking at a little cart? You know, little carts they have in the middle of the mall. If God told you go look at the entire mall, why are you looking at a small piece that's inside the mall? God said look at the entire building. Don't just look at a small section. This is what's going to happen in 2020. God is sending people where it's going to be so big, it's going to magnify even their own thoughts. But if God said it, then we got to go and just do it. Then it says here in verse 30, Lot and his 2 daughters left Zoar and settled in the mountains. For he was afraid to stay in Zoar. He's afraid to stay where he wanted to go. Now he don't even want to stay there. He don't want to stay where he wanted to go. But okay, go ahead. And he and his 2 daughters lived in a cage. He was afraid to stay in Zoar. He was afraid to stay there. I mean, that's... So it says in verse 30 of Genesis chapter 19, he and his 2 daughters lived in a cave. They lived in a cave. They're living below their means. They're living below what God wanted them to do. They lived in a cave. So it said in verse 31, one day the older daughter said to the younger, our father's old. And this is when they tried to go ahead and make generations for themselves and so forth. But the whole gist of why I wanted to bring this up is because even Lot himself was afraid to be elevated. And people nowadays are afraid when you tell somebody, even I've been there, where I was told, go to this particular dealership and look at this particular car and don't settle for nothing less. And you know what I did? I didn't go. You know why? Because I felt like if I go, I can't afford it. So I didn't go. And that same prophet that came to me, he came to me again and he said, you didn't go where I told you to go, did you? And I said, no, I didn't, but I'm going to go. Because I was afraid to tell the prophet. I was afraid that I didn't have the money. But that particular prophet knew. He even came to me and said, you were fearful. He told me that. And that's what happens with a lot of us in the past. What we've done, we've become our own fear. So now I have a new mindset because I got a new revelation. And today, if a prophet calls me and said, I need you to go to this particular dealership, whichever one it is, it could be Maybach. I'm going. I'm going now because I have learned that it's not my will, but God's will. And God's will in his word says that he wishes us to bless and be prosper above all and be in good health. So I'm my worst person when I let fear hold me back from what God said. And I knew that the prophet was right when he came to me and said, God told you to go to this particular dealership, because guess what? I have been dreaming and thinking of that particular car. But then when the prophet came to me and said, go to the dealership, the car is there for you. You're not going to have to pay for it. The same car that I had been praying and dreaming about when the angel came to Lot and said, come on, get out of here. The angel had to pull Lot by the hand. That's basically, what was happening with me. The prophet told me, I told you to go and do this and you didn't do it. So now what we going to have to start doing as people now with God, you're serving God, you're serving the master, you're serving God Almighty, Jesus Christ, Holy Spirit. If you're serving this God, then you're going to have to do things his way. You're going to have to let go of fear. That's why in the previous post that I put, God told me to let people know this is a Lot season. A Lot meaning in abundance, and a Lot meaning Lot, the servant of God, meaning you are not to look back. You are not to let fear hold you back. Anything that's trying to hold you back, you need to let go of. Because this is the year of elevation. And just like the number 2020, meaning you've waited patiently, you've struggled, you've done all this stuff, and now you're going to get your blessings. now we have to understand we work for this time. We pray for this time. We can't let our own selves hold us back, and we done got to this point. So now is a time to be elevated. Don't be like Lot. Don't be afraid. If God told you to rise up all the way to the mountain, then don't settle in the plane. Because guess what? Eventually, you're going to end up leaving the plane and going to the mountain anyway. So you might as well just go on where God told you to go. Don't settle for small. He said it small twice in that one sentence. Small. Don't settle for small anymore. This is elevation. I know even like us, we renting right now in an office space, but I'm telling you, I believe God's going to elevate us to a building that's probably not even in that same location where we're at. It's going to be a building that I didn't have my eyes set on. I didn't have my heart set on. And God said, I'm not only giving you that building space, I'm giving you that entire building. Now the tenants that are there, the businesses that are there are going to now start paying you. But we so busy trying to look at the plane. Well, lift your eyes up high, because it says, lift your eyes up high. Where's your help come from? From above. So stop looking down. It's time for elevation. Amen.